So my name's Andrew Dent. I've been running a, hang on, let me find my, sorry, hang on, there we go, there we go. Yeah, my name's Andrew Dent. I've been running a material science and innovation library in New York for the last 20 years. My job has been to help a whole bunch of clients, all sorts of household brands, find innovative and sustainable materials and to help them implement those materials into their technologies and products. I wanted to spend a few minutes this morning just kind of going over where I think printed electronics, printed and flexible electronics are going in basically in the consumer world. You know, obviously there is industry, there is military as well, and they find application. But in the consumer world, I kind of want to go through a couple of different areas I felt were interesting and you should probably know about as where printed and flexible electronics are developing. Okay, can everyone see my screen? Are we good with that? Wonderful, okay. Thanks, Tommy. Okay, so as I said, I run a material science library. We have locations in New York City as well as all places around the world. And the idea is to give access to samples. The idea to sort of touch and feel materials so you can really experience them. Because obviously if you're producing something, you want to make sure that the consumer understands what it looks and feels like. So samples are key for us. We work in all sorts of different industries. Everything that you as a consumer interact with, whether it's home appliances, consumer electronics, home textiles, fashion, automotive, architecture, everywhere. And from that, we get a really broad view about what types of materials and technologies are out there. So we get a sort of understanding of a 360,000 sort of view over the world of materials and where they're emerging and what we find exciting. Okay. So we know, obviously, these types of electronics allow us to get thinner, lighter, a lot more conformable, lower power. But you know, what are the most exciting markets? So for me, I would probably go through these four: medical, supply chain, consumer products, and also packaging. Those, you know, there are obviously others, but for us, as we look to brands and see what some of their challenges are, these are the areas they're interested in. So, so medical. As we've seen most recently, it's a great idea if you can keep the patient out of the hospital. So therefore, how do you do that? You do that by basically creating digitized systems that allow them to put on themselves devices and systems that can then basically monitor them outside of the hospital. So you can make sure that they're kept healthy and you can also interact with them, but without necessarily making it much more too cumbersome. So doctor fits and forgets it. It interfaces with the body, doesn't require much power, less maintenance. So therefore, these sorts of printed electronics allow those sorts of technologies to be enabled and to allow you to actually do that effectively. Flexible, stretchable, thin, low power devices is basically where we're going. These can get so that they can be put onto the body relatively easily. You can get display systems as well that allow readouts, so it's easier for the actual consumer to use. So we're seeing that sort of development. Multiple devices on the same piece. This product by Lumia is an example. I can get heating, I can get displays, touch-sensitive surfaces, all within the same material that flexes and forms around the body, very much like your t-shirt or your jeans do. Okay, with supply chain. Okay, with supply chain, that's really the stuff that you don't see typically as consumers, but for brands, for people producing stuff, it's so important. How do you make sure it's more efficient? I don't want to lose anything on the way. How do I make sure I can deliver just in time so I don't have an overstock? But also, how do I make sure that the product doesn't go through any sort of extreme climate changes? Water, temperature, time. I want to make sure the product ends up in the market right at exactly the right time without spending too time on the shipping container, without going through too much of a change in terms of temperature, that sort of thing. And then also sustainability. There is an interest to try and track everything continually. So for end of life, there's the ability to then see where it's come from and where it can go. Time strips are a great example, whether it's for blood management, whether it is for the little straps at the bottom, in for the mother. Ensure that the mother is actually. I'm going to move very quickly because my connection is unstable. So, creates that she needs for the baby are done at the right time. They've found that basically 60% of Pakistani mothers do not actually do all the immunizations. So, in order to ensure that, these little things will tell you exactly what needs to happen. Okay, so, and also with things like fashion brands, this is Econ ID. They've actually got a system which tracks the fabric and the apparel itself, much like a passport. So in the same way that you know exactly where you've been from your passport, these are small tracking devices that enable that as well. Consumer products. Okay, so obviously, as we know, Internet of Things is this burgeoning, huge system that is going to be potentially taking over our lives, but also just making sure that we can track things and things can respond and enable us to have simpler, more connected lives. The numbers are staggering, but the ones I'm interested in, the ones that can potentially help us without necessarily improve our lives. So whether it is simply just enabling us to get better sleep, or potentially just to allow us to get better yoga positions. The idea is these types of systems can fit seamlessly and flexibly into our current consumer products and enable us to live better lives while still ensuring that the products themselves are functioning as they should. I gave you 3 different versions there, which was consumer products, supply chain, and medical. The 4th one is kind of like a be careful, just be aware thing, packaging. Now, this is one area where flexible electronics have done really well. And for me, as a material scientist and someone who really believes very much in sustainability, I think that we need to be more careful about where we put these printed electronics. They're great, they've been developed to create wonderful new efficiencies, etc. But for packaging, I would be wary. If you're going to choose this sort of electronics for packaging, just try to think about careful use and end of life. So much of our packaging has caused problems in terms of the use of plastic and single-use plastics. So I want you to do, if you're ever thinking of using it in packaging, there's some potential there, but do it carefully. Is it an essential need? Is it a way in which we can certainly get improvement in life, improvement in efficiency, and improvement in sustainability? Just creating a fancy new gadget for packaging, which then only gets used for perhaps 1 or 2 days and gets thrown away, for me is not the best use for this type of technology. So I think very much, if you are going to use packaging, just be careful. Have intelligent use, make sure it's actually worth it, make sure it's basically either ensuring that blood gets there at the right temperature, rather than simply just wow factor, because I feel like with our packaging, we need to be a lot more careful because those sorts of things don't last very long, and it's perhaps not the best use of this incredible technology. Okay, so that was my sort of presentation. If I can bring it back over to Tommy, thank you very much.